Hey there! Most people know how to replace the valve in the back of the toilet, but if you're new to Homeowner and you haven't had to mess with this yet, here's what we do. The problem is, with the water turned on, it just keeps running. You can hear water running someplace, and when you look inside these things, a lot of them have this valve here. Now, this type of setup, you have a couple adjustments you can make on it. There's a screw here that you can tighten down, and that lifts this float up, and that's what actually seals the water flow, shuts the water flow off. So you can tighten that down with a screwdriver, and hopefully that'll help. The other thing you can try is the ball here, the float. You see that's a threaded rod. You can screw this out just a little bit, which makes the arm longer, and a lot of times that will shut the water off sooner. So in this area we have a lot of hard water, a lot of calcium and whatnot build up, a lot of minerals in the water, and the valves kind of get they get to where they're not going to seal too well. But anyway, the next step, if you can't get this to shut off, it's really easy to replace this assembly here. So the first step in that is there's a valve down here. I have that shut off. If your house doesn't have a valve on each appliance, now would be the time to put it in. You might find the valve inside the cabinet if your water supply comes out of a cabinet like this, but if not, now's a good time to get it shut off. So next thing to do is drain all the water out of the tank, and we're going to loosen this up from the bottom. Underneath here, if you look, we're going to take this apart right here, right below the tank, and that's going to let this top assembly come out, and then we're going to replace it with a new one. So let's get started. First thing I'm going to do is throw a towel on the floor to mop up all the water that we can't get out. Loosen this up. This is the nut that holds the guts to the inside of the tank. So now that it's loose, I'm going to move the tank. Now that it's loose, I'm going to move the old valve, and we're going to start seeing some water leak out. Just what's left in the tank. So have a towel ready. There's going to be a fair amount for it to catch. So now this piece will just lift right out. I need to take this hose off, and this assembly we're going to get ready to throw it away. So the new piece, this is adjustable. You can make this longer or shorter to adjust for the different size of tank that you have. So I need to take the, oh, it's already, alright, check the height. It looks like it's going to be good. So this already has a gasket on it that's going to seal the inside of the tank. And it came with a plastic nut. This just threads up on the bottom side of that same shaft, and that's going to make it watertight. Don't have to crank it down really tight, just make it snug, and that's going to pull that gasket down into the hole on the tank. And that's going to seal it off, make it tight, watertight. Okay, so next step, I'm going to take the water line and hook that up to the bottom of the new valve. And again, finger tight, should be plenty. This rubber hose comes with it. We're going to replace the old one. This fits onto a place on the side of your new valve, and then it goes down into the middle spout here. This fills the bowl up whenever you flush. This is how water gets inside the bowl. As far as to fill it up, get ready for the next flush. Alright, we should be set to go. I'm going to turn the water valve on. You can hear the water coming in. Quick check down here for leaks. Everything feels good. But throughout the day, I'm going to keep checking that hooked up on the underside there. It's just finger tight, that's all it needs to be, but I'm going to make sure it's tight enough throughout the day, and probably a little bit tomorrow just to make sure it's tight enough. Then after this fills up, there's an adjustment wheel here. I don't know if you can see this little wheel here that you turn and just adjust how high the water level is here. If you have trouble needing a little bit more water, just let it raise up. It's really simple. But that's all it takes to replace the valve. If you ever have a stool that runs, that's all we have to do. This is what it should look like. Before we turn this on and check it, if you noticed when you opened this up initially, we had water that was filled up to the top here and just kept running inside here, and that's why that kept running. That's what we would do, is just change this thing out like we did. Another problem these have is a lot of times with this seals at the bottom, when you hit the arm here, this lever lifts that up, lets water into into the bowl. Sometimes if it just leaks initially, here and there, not really running all the time, you look and water's not running inside this, but you still hear water running periodically, perhaps steady. If the water line's not up here, we probably have to replace this unit here. It really isn't that hard. Some toilets will have a flapper valve down here, which is really easy to change. You can just take that rubber piece off of the tower here and replace it, and a lot of times that'll be all you have to do. I'm going to go ahead and replace this middle here out because that's the problem that we have with this particular setup. I like this type of filler valve. It does good. It's worth it to change it out as long as we have this open. We're working on it anyway. So to get this tank off, there's 3 bolts that hold this tank on. So I need to take the nuts off the bottom side, and then we can take this tank up. You may have just 2 bolts, so whatever setup you have, that's what we're going to do. I'm going to take the nuts off the bottom side here. You might need a wrench, depends on what type of setup that you had before. This particular one has plastic wing nut type of nuts that you can do with your finger, so not a problem at all. If you work with a wrench, just be careful you don't smack the side of the bowl because it's ceramic. It cracks easy. Okay, I have the wing nuts off. I'm going to take these bolts out. If you notice my fingers, the water really does something here. It really turns that black. When you touch it, it comes off on everything, so just keep that in mind. So the water line is loose. I've taken the bolts out of the back. This should lift straight up. Okay, let me flip this over so we can look at it. So this is the bottom of the tank. This is the valve that we just put in, the fill valve. And this is the bottom side. This is where your water comes out of the tank and flows into the bowl itself. So first thing we have to do is take this gasket off here. So we need to take this gasket off. Just kind of peel that back. So there's a plastic nut that keeps this tight. So we need to take that off. There we go. Now this assembly, the handle, the flush handle goes through this. So we kind of have to just unhook that, and we're going to throw this old piece away. So the new valve here, this is just like the old one. If you like the flapper valve, right now is a good time to just replace it with that. The only problem with replacing it is you have to do something with the chain and what holds this up. Sometimes that kind of has a temperament of its own. But to use this, I'm going to take this nut off the bottom. That's the same nut that we just took off. This has a little angled gasket right here, rubber gasket. This is what goes down the inside of the tank, and when we tighten this nut up, that makes it a good seal on the tank itself. So let's put that back together. When I put this in, I'm going to catch the arm and flip this back over, and I'm just going to put the new nut on it. Make sure that I'm lined up the way I want to be. Alright, this is tight. The gasket that goes between the tank and the bowl, we took that one off. I want to put a new one on, just a little bit of added security, I guess. So that just kind of fits right in place. And then when we tighten the tank down, that smashes it against the two surfaces and makes our seal, so we should not have a leak on that. So that's good. So we'll put our new bolts in. This gasket's in place. My bolts are ready. Let's line this up and set it down. Now on the underside, I'm going to put a rubber washer up on that bolt, then the steel, and then the nut on each one of them. We'll kind of level the bowl up, kind of eyeball it while I tighten these down finger tight. Now as we turn the water back on and check everything, we're going to check for water coming between the new seal that we just put on. I'm not going to tighten these down real tight right now, but if I need to tighten, if I have a little leak between the two pieces, this is what I'm going to do, is tighten up these bolts. Everything's turned back on. I don't feel any leaks any place between the bowl and the tank or on my water line. So I'm going to keep checking this several times throughout the day, and a couple times tomorrow, make sure that everything's good. But it's that simple to replace your own valves and take care of the leak yourself. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned, we'll see what else we can get into.